everyone, I'm Kelsey from Easy Photo Video, and today I'm doing a Tamron 11-20mm F2.8 vlog test. So the camera I'm using right now is the Tamron 11-20 and I've got it at 11 millimeters, and it's in shutter priority at 1/50 because I'm recording in 4K 24p. And I've got a ND8 ND filter on, and right now I'm kind of standing, but if I walk around a little bit, you can kind of see how it does. This is a Sony A6400, so it does not have in-body image stabilization, and the Tamron lens also does not have lens stabilization. So it would probably look a little better with a Sony A6500 or A6600, but this is the A6400 because a lot of you might have that. I also have it on center focus, so it should be, or center metering, so it should be trying to expose my face. And I think that's it. As far as audio, I'm using the Rode Wireless Go 2. I had the previous one version, the original Rode Wireless Go, but for outdoors I really found that this little wind muff would fall off way too easily. So even if you don't need both transmitters, I highly recommend, if you're going to do outdoor vlogging and you want to use this external audio solution, to get the version 2, because these dead cats, the wind muff, windscreen, whatever you want to call it, will not fall off. It's actually locked into place. And otherwise, I have a Sirui, sorry, don't know how to pronounce that, SIRUI, little mini tabletop tripod here, and it's allowing me to actually keep my elbow close to my body so that I'm not carrying the full weight of this stretched out, so it's a little bit easier to hand hold. So yeah, that's my current setup right now. I'm also going to show you what this looks like on the A6500 with IBIS to see if it's any better. It should be better, but we'll see how much better. If you're going to be walking around, especially, that some sort of stabilization is probably going to be necessary, but it depends on how much you can be okay with having some shakiness in your video. So it's kind of a subjective thing. And yeah, so this is what the Tamron 11-20 F2.8 looks like at 11 millimeters on the Sony A6400. Alright, now just for comparison, I'm still on the Sony A6400 camera body, but now I've got the Sony E 10-18 f4 OSS lens. So this lens actually does have optical steady shot, which has stabilization inside the lens itself. So hopefully it would appear to be more stable than the Tamron 11-20 millimeter that does not have any lens stabilization. Also, this is at 10 millimeters, so we have an extra 1 millimeter at the wide angle end. So you may or may not be able to tell if the field of view is slightly wider. It also obviously depends on how far away from my face I'm holding the camera. So right now I'm holding it with my elbow kind of locked against my body, but if I move my hand out further, you should see a lot more of the background here. And if I move in closer, maybe it'll be a little less shaky because I have a little bit more stability with my elbow against my body, but maybe not. So this is an example with the Sony 10-18. You can look at the colors. Let me see if I can get the sky here. I do not have an ND filter on this, although maybe I should because it's at f13 right now. But the ISO is 125, so it's not maxing out. I do have an ND filter for this, but didn't bring it out. So anyway, everything else still the same little tripod I'm holding on to, same Rode Wireless Go 2 external mic. So how does this look? How does this sound? How is the shakiness compared to the Tamron 11-20mm on the Sony A6400 body? So just so you can see here, this is the setup I've got. Let me turn it around for you. This is the Sony A6400. I've got the Rode Wireless Go 2. And this is the Sony 10-18 lens on right now. And this is the Zhiyun E little mini tripod I'm using. So if you're interested in any of these, I'll link to them via Amazon in the description below. If you found this video helpful, you could use one of those links as a way of saying thanks for me for making this video. And yeah, so I'm just kind of holding it. If you can see that, I'm holding it kind of close to my arm, so there's this point of stability here. So that should give me a little bit more stability than if I'm holding it way out like this. Then my arm kind of gets tired over time and can kind of get shakes in the arm like this that'll affect your vlog footage. So that's just kind of how my setup is, just letting you see. I'm recording this right now with a DJI Pocket 2. Highly recommended, actually a really great vlog camera. Not the best image quality compared to an APS-C camera, but the best stabilization if that's what you care most about. Also super freaking lightweight, like seriously. If you're gonna do a lot of vlogging and walking around, I guess I could show you here that this is the comparison. I don't have the external mic set up, so this is all the internal mic, and it is a little bit windy. But you should see that the stabilization is far superior than the Sony A6500 or A6400 with either lens. So I really like this for travel. I would highly recommend it for travel, although it's not good for photos. So I still would rather bring an APS-C camera or another camera for photos. Your phone's probably good enough during daylight, but if you want to take anything low light, you're probably going to need more like an APS-C camera or full frame if you're lucky enough to have one. So, all right, now I have the Tamron 11-20mm at 11mm on my Sony A6500 with IBIS on. So this is the situation where the camera lens does not have stabilization, but the camera body does. So this should be a test of whether IBIS, or Sony's in-body image stabilization in the Sony A6500, is working better than not having any stabilization in the body. So one thing I will note is the A6500 does not have a screen that can articulate so that you see it when you are vlogging. The A6600 does. So if you are primarily wanting to vlog, you'd probably want to go for that if you want in-body image stabilization in your Sony APS-C camera body. However, I will say that you can get a little too used to looking at the screen, which kind of looks weird when you're vlogging. You really want to be looking at the camera lens. So in some ways, it's a little disconcerting to not make sure right now that I'm in frame. But since I'm at 11mm, I'm pretty sure that I am in frame, and I'm not kind of tempted to look at the display instead of the lens when I'm trying to talk to you. So just some considerations. And yeah, if I hold my hand out further, you can get a wider field of view, but it's obviously a little bit harder to hold that for a long period of time without having your arm get tired. So alright, so now I've got the Sony A6500 with the Sony E 10-18mm F4 OSS lens. So both the camera body and the lens should have stabilization built in. So in theory, it should be quite a bit less shaky than the previous video with the Sony A6400. I'm using the exact same setup otherwise, with the exception that I did add a ND8 filter to this 10 to 18mm lens this time. Also, the Sony A6400 can do HLG HDR in camera without any post-processing editing. So I did have that on the A6400. The A6500 that I'm using right now does not have the HLG picture profile, so this is the default picture profile, as in no picture profile. So this is at 10mm. I'm holding it as before with my arm, elbow, basically right next to my body. If I extend my arm, there might be a little bit more shake because it is just a little bit harder to hold it up. So yeah, this is the 10 to 18 on the A6500. All right, so here's my second test with the DJI Pocket 2. So in the first case, you could have just had the regular DJI without any creator combo. I didn't use anything that was part of the creator combo, with the exception of the do-it-all handle, just to extend the length, which makes it a little bit easier to hold, but it's not required. This time, I actually do have the wide-angle lens installed. So if I'm holding it at my elbow, this is the field of view, and if I hold it out more, then you can see more field of view. And it's also a much lighter setup than the Sony APS-C cameras, so it doesn't actually take as much effort or get as heavy when you hold it farther out. So that's another pro of the DJI Pocket 2. The other thing is I am using the external wireless microphone here. So it is a windy day today, so it's probably a good test to see if the microphone is doing okay in the wind. There's some gusts going on right now, so that's a good test. In the previous clip, I did notice that there was some wind sound from the internal microphone. The nice thing though is that you can still hear me talking when you just use the internal microphone. I just used this on a weekend trip the past weekend. Didn't use the external mic even though I actually had it. It was just easier not to deal with it. And I was actually surprisingly okay, satisfied, happy even with the audio quality. Yeah, you could hear a little bit of the wind sound, but I mean, in a family vacation video, you don't have to be as, perfectionistic about having perfect audio quality, that kind of thing. So I will note that I hadn't been super happy with the DJI Pocket 2 video or image quality until I started using the flat color profile D-Cine-like and found a LUT that allowed me to just in Final Cut, my editing software, just essentially, click a box and then it would give me Rec 709 coloring. So essentially just regular coloring that you get from a default APS-C camera type thing. So the thing about the Pocket 2 is you really do have to kind of know your settings. I'm also on Pro settings and at the auto max ISO 100 because it's a much smaller sensor than an APS-C sensor, and you kind of don't want a whole bunch of grain. So during the daytime, max 100 is fine, and the nighttime you might need to bump that up a little bit just to get some extra light hitting the sensor. But the thing about the D-Cine-like color profile is it should look a little bit better here when there are serious darks, shadows and highlights differences, when you need a lot more dynamic range. So it's not going to be as good image quality as the Sony APS-C cameras, but I think it's much better than a GoPro, even the newest GoPro Hero 9. The stabilization is just amazing since it's actually using a physical gimbal. It's super lightweight, very portable. I thought I'd be bummed about the battery life, but it's actually been pretty good, and I did find a solution for the battery life that I really like. So I'll probably do that in another video, especially if you want to see that. Let me know in the comments below. I'll tell you about how I extend the battery life of my Pocket 2. Otherwise, I hope you can see that the stabilization here just really can't be beat. I mean, I almost think that stabilization is more important than video quality in this case when you're walking around vlogging. I think the video quality is good enough, whereas on the Sony APS-C clips that I showed previously in this video, you'll probably notice that there's a fair amount of shaking, especially if I were to show you these side by side. So just food for thought. I wouldn't say that the creator combo is 100% necessary. You could get by without it, but I am right now using the wide angle lens and the external mic with the do-it-all handle. So if you can afford to get the creator combo, it might be worth it. If you can't, I think you would still like the Pocket 2. But if you prefer to have your Sony APS-C camera, I hope this video helped you decide whether you want the Tamron 11-20mm lens or the Sony 10-18mm lens for your vlogging videos. And hopefully you'll have a better idea of whether the in-body image stabilization in the Sony a6500 is worth it over the Sony a6400 that doesn't have in-body image stabilization. And next I probably will show you what the Sony a6400 on a gimbal looks like. I'm not sure if it will balance with the Tamron 11-20 because it's over the payload limit. The 10-18 is right under, or maybe right at the limit. So I've done that before, I know it can be done, but I'll go ahead and try that and we'll see how it looks using a Sony APS-C camera on a gimbal and compare the stabilization there. So stay tuned for that coming up next. Alright, so just so you can see, this is the setup that I'm recording with. I've got the Zhiyun Crane M2. Right now it's in pan follow mode. Not sure you can see that or not. Here's the side. And yeah, I've got the Rode Wireless Go external mic, the Sony A6400, and the Sony 10-18 lens. So I'm not actually using the flip up screen. It's just here on the back just because of balance. I'm not sure it would be that great. And also with a 10mm lens, I'm really not worried about being in the frame. I'm pretty sure that I'm in the frame. So this is the current setup. Let's see how it looks. Alright, so I got the Zhiyun Crane M2 with the Sony a6400 and the Sony 10-18 f4 OSS lens. I'm using the Rode Wireless Go 2 here for my audio, and it is somewhat windy today, so that'll be a good test for this also. Yeah, so you should see I'm walking around. I do have an ND8 filter on, and all the settings should be the same as before, but now I have the gimbal, so the stabilization should be significantly better. I'm just in the regular pan follow mode here, and I am pretty much at maybe slightly over the payload limit of the Crane M2. It is probably not perfectly balanced, but it should be good enough. The motors are quite good. It's on the high strength motor setting, and I'm not seeing any visual problems with the gimbal here. Yeah, so this is an example of using a gimbal for vlogging. It is quite a bit extra weight, especially to travel around with, not as compact, doesn't fit as easily in a small bag, that kind of stuff. You do have to worry about charging the gimbal, and you have to worry about balancing it. And that's probably the biggest con about a APS-C gimbal, is having to balance. So for me, the Crane M2 is actually really nice in that regard because it has little features built into it that allow you to kind of keep the same balance going. even after you don't use it one day and then you use it again, it's fairly easy to get it rebalanced. So I am at 10 millimeters here, just double checking. And if I hold my arm all the way out, this is the field of view that you get. And with the gimbal, it does take a little time to kind of follow my face. I have noticed that the Sony lens does seem to be doing a little better than the Tamron in challenging lighting conditions for autofocus. So that's just something to note also. Not that the Tamron's terrible with the autofocus, but that I have noticed reviewing my clips, it is a little bit going in and out of focus compared to the Sony lens. There is quite a bit of wind right now, so I'm curious how the Rode Wireless Go 2 sounds. And yeah, so the Crane M2's pretty nice. I have used it on travels and the footage looks really well, especially if you're just gonna kind of stop and talk about something behind you. This 10-18 is a really small lens. It's only 0.5 pounds compared to the Tamron at 0.75 pounds. So it fits very nicely on the Crane M2. It's not super heavy to hold. It's actually a little bit easier to hold than the previous tripod I was using, just because, I don't know, I guess because I have the gimbal grip upright. I don't know. It's heavier, but it seems a little bit more balanced or something. I don't know. So yeah, this is the Sony 10-18 on the A6400 with the Zhiyun Crane M2 gimbal. So how does this footage look? And I didn't do this test before because it wouldn't have looked very good, and I honestly didn't really think about it, but here's an example of using a gimbal, the Zhiyun Crane M2. And I'm gonna walk up these stairs here so you can see exactly how good or bad the stabilization is if you were to be walking up some stairs. And what if I walk down the stairs? Make sure I don't trip. So how did that look? Should have looked pretty good on a gimbal. All right, I'm sure it looks silly to anyone else in this park around me, but I am going to show you my setup here with the Tamron on a gimbal. So here it is. Believe it or not, this is the Tamron 11-20 on my Zhiyun Crane M2. It is over the payload, and it did just earlier kind of fall down, drop down I should say, not fall. So I don't know that I would recommend this, but it does work, at least short term. I'm sure you probably wear out the motors more since it is over the payload, but it is quite a bit more compact than any other gimbal you could use. So yeah, the Tamron 11-20, it is not balanced on the gimbal, but the gimbal motors are strong enough to hold it up. Again, I'm not recommending this, but I am just showing you that it can be done. All right, so here's a really good vlogging test. It is super windy. I would be very surprised if you can't hear any wind here. But this is with the Tamron 11-20mm F2.8. No image stabilization in the lens. I also have the Sony A6400. No image stabilization in the camera body, but I am using a Zhiyun Crane M2. And if you know anything about the Crane M2 and weights of Sony cameras and camera bodies and lenses, this is above the payload. I believe the payload is 1.56 or 1.57 pounds. I didn't do the math, but my 10-18 is right at the limit. So I'm sure this is at least 1/4 of a pound over the limit. I do have the lens hood on and an ND8 filter. I've been recording this throughout the afternoon, so the sun has changed. So let me go try to get into the sun again and show you what this looks like. And so here you go, I'm in the sun. These should be all the same settings as before, and you should be able to see that it is significantly better stabilized than before when it was not on a gimbal. So here is a good test. One thing I have noticed is that the Tamron 11-20 does have extremely good colors. So that is one thing that kind of improves the image quality a fair amount compared to the Sony 10-18. Another thing, other people have commented that the 10-18, being a lens that was released in 2013, is not as good image quality. Well, my copy is actually extremely good. It's very sharp. I have zero problems with it at all. But this Tamron probably is just a tad bit sharper, so that is something else to keep in mind. Yes, having OSS in the lens could be a good thing, but I don't think it's as good as having a gimbal or using something like a Pocket 2 to vlog on. So just so you can see, this is what it's like to vlog with the Tamron 11-20 F2.8 with an ND8 filter on and a lens hood on the Sony A6400 on the Crane M2 gimbal with the Rode Wireless Go 2. It's, for some reason, not that hard to carry. I don't really understand. It's kind of nice at this distance. I am at 11 millimeters. I'm in shutter priority mode, so whatever the exposure, which is exposed in the center, which should be my face, thinks the aperture should be, in conjunction with an ISO, and I have the ISO on auto with a maximum of 400. And this is just one more test. This is the internal audio. I'm not using anything from the Creator Combo except for the do-it-all handle, but it's only just to hold it a little bit easier and get it in and out of the case a little bit easier. I am using an ND8 filter, an official DJI Osmo Pocket ND filter from the filter set, and just wanted to show that you can get a little bit better, you know, not have the sky super blown out. I might actually probably use a 16 or a 32 in this case otherwise, but I was comparing it with my APS-C, Sony APS-C cameras, which I had an ND8 filter for one of them, so I just decided to use ND8 for everything to have a little better comparison. But yeah, this is just wanted to give you an example of how you can get a little bit better image quality by not having the highlights blown out by using an ND filter with the DJI Pocket 2. So if the choice is between this Pocket 2 and the weight of this Zhiyun Crane with the Sony APS-C and the Tamron 11-20 and the external microphone, I mean, you can save a lot of money, a lot of weight, and your arms won't be so tired. And I would highly recommend the Pocket 2 if image stabilization is the most important thing, and weight. It's perfect for travel, it's perfect for vacation, family videos. But of course, I know I fall into the trap too of loving that larger sensor image quality. So hope this video helped you kind of figure out some vlogging options. If you want to check out the links in the description below and use one of them, that would really help me and be your way of kind of saying thanks for me for making this video and encourage me and let me be able to make more videos like this. So go ahead and comment in the comments down below. Let me know if you have any questions. I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.